Too many people walk through life wearing a mask built by expectations, a mask formed by applause. They chase approval like it's oxygen, living for likes, recognition, and validation. But I'm here to tell you this, don't do it for them. Don't run that extra mile so someone pats your back. Don't stay disciplined because you want a round of applause. Don't show up in the gym, in the grind, in the fight for anyone else but you. When you rely on others to fuel your fire, your flame dies the second they leave the room. What happens when no one is watching? What happens when nobody says, good job? That's when most people quit. But the real ones, the warriors, they never needed cheers. They built their fire from pain, from silence, from rejection, from being counted out. They didn't do it for recognition. They did it to conquer themselves. You don't need a crowd. You need a mission. You don't need approval. You need purpose. Most people are addicted to being seen, not to becoming someone real. They'll work hard only when someone's watching. But I ask you, what you when it's styling, when it's just you and your weaknesses? That answer defines your legacy. You want to be free for people. Stop training to impress. Stop grinding for praise. Dig deep and find your why. Find the version of you that no one knows about, the broken one, the one they ignored, and fight for that person. You owe it to them. If you're still breathing, you've got work to do. Not for your friends, not for your family, not for the doubters or the haters. You do this because it's your duty to become unrecognizable to the person you used to be. That's the mission. That's the battle. Don't do it for others. Do it for the beast that lives inside you, waiting to be unleashed. When your drive is built on validation from others, you've already lost the war before you've even stepped on the battlefield. Validation is a shaky structure. It crumbles under pressure, disappears when times get hard, and leaves you empty when the applause fades. You can't build your life, your discipline, your grind on the shaky opinions of people who aren't even walking your path. What happens when they stop clapping? What happens when the recognition dies down? Most people collapse because their identity was tied to being noticed, not to becoming something real. The truth is, nobody is thinking about you as much as you think. They're wrapped up in their own lives, their own problems, their own weaknesses. And if you're chasing their approval, you're chasing shadows. You're handing them the keys to your motivation. That's a dangerous game because once they take their attention off you, your momentum dies. That's why most people fall off. They were never fueled by internal grit. They were performing, not transforming. They were actors, not warriors. You've got to break free from that addiction to being seen. You've got to kill that need to be praised. That mindset will keep you soft, dependent, and weak. Real strength, it grows in isolation. It grows when you're grinding in silence, when you're pushing with no spotlight, when there's no audience, just you versus you. That's where you find the savage version of yourself. That's where you become undeniable. Not because someone said you were good, but because you know what you've endured when no one was watching. Think about it. Some of the most disciplined, driven people you've never even heard of. They don't post about their progress. They don't beg for congratulations. They put their heads down and grind because the voice inside their soul is louder than any applause. They don't need permission. They don't need motivation from others. They are the motivation. They are the storm. And they built it in silence while the world slept on them. That's how you become dangerous. That's how you become unshakable. When your foundation is internal, you can't be broken by rejection, silence, or doubt. You've got to get to a point where validation becomes irrelevant. Whether they notice or ignore you, you move the same way. Locked in, focused, relentless. Because it's not about them. It never was. It's about becoming someone that even your past self wouldn't recognize. If you're still relying on people to clap for you before you start, you'll never finish. If you need to be seen to stay consistent, you're a puppet, not a warrior. And puppets don't survive the war. The only validation that matters is the one that comes from within, from the part of you that refuses to quit when the world forgets your name. That's where your real identity is forged. That's where legends are made. True power comes when you do it for yourself. There's a moment in every person's life where they've got to stop asking, who's watching? And start asking, why am I doing this? That moment separates the weak from the relentless. When you train, when you suffer, when you grind, and you do it for yourself, That's when you tap into something most people never reach. You unlock a level of strength that isn't tied to reward or recognition. It's tied to purpose. And purpose is unshakable when it's rooted in self-respect. You can lie to others. You can fake discipline for the camera. You can show up when people expect it. But you can't lie to yourself in the mirror. You know when you're slacking. You know when you're faking effort. You know when you're cutting corners. And the person who suffers the most from that lie is you. But the opposite is just as powerful. When you show up day after day with no fanfare and no pat on the back, you begin to build something that can't be touched. You're becoming someone solid. Not because they told you to, but because you refuse to stay weak. You have to become your own audience. You have to learn how to clap for yourself. The world will forget you quickly. Friends will stop checking in. People will move on. That's life. But the warrior in you, the one who wakes up to chase discomfort, the one who drags themselves forward through exhaustion and pain, that person will never abandon you. That's who you fight for. That's who you do this for. Because when you walk alone and still move forward, you become a force that can't be broken. Most people are driven by pressure from others. They want to prove something. They want to make a statement. But once they prove it, they stop because their mission was always external. Their motivation ran out when the noise did. But when your mission is internal, when you're chasing your own standard, your own transformation, there is no finish line. There is no end. You are constantly evolving, constantly pushing the boundary of what's possible. You won't find this kind of drive in comfort. You won't find it in compliments. You'll find it when you're alone, dragging your tired body through another workout, when no one cares, when no one is checking on you, when the only person who gives a damn about your progress is you. That's when the real version of you is born. Not the one people admire, the one even you didn't know existed. The version of you that doesn't quit because no one's clapping. Doing it for self isn't selfish. It's necessary. Because if you don't have your own back in the darkness, who will? You've got to become your own standard, not to impress the world, but to dominate the part of you that used to settle, that used to quit, that used to make excuses. Every rep, every mile, every early morning, you're not building a body. You're building a mindset that says, I don't need anyone to push me. I push myself. That's true power. External is temporary. Internal purpose is eternal. The problem with praise is that it fades. The same people who cheer for you today will forget your name tomorrow. You think you're doing something big because people like your progress photos or they tell you you're inspiring. But what happens when the compliments stop? What happens when your effort becomes invisible again? If you built your grind on that praise, your foundation cracks. You start slipping. You start questioning why you're doing it. That's the trap most people fall into. They chase short-term validation, not long-term transformation. Praise is like sugar. It gives you a quick rush, makes you feel good for a moment, but leaves you weaker in the long run. It becomes a drug. You want more of it. You start adjusting your behavior just to get it. And suddenly, you're not living for yourself anymore. You're performing for attention. You're changing your rhythm to match someone else's expectations. That's not discipline. That's dependency. And that kind of mindset collapses under pressure. Purpose, on the other hand, is steel. It doesn't break. It doesn't rely on outside approval. Purpose comes from something deeper. It comes from knowing who you were, who you are, and who you refuse to be. It comes from that dark place, that brutal honesty where you look yourself in the mirror and say, I will never go back to being that weak version of me. That's not something you post on social media. That's not something that needs likes. That's something that lives in your gut. Internal purpose keeps you going when you're tired. When you're broken, nobody's going. It lives inside your bones. It reminds you you're fighting for. Not the critics, not the haters, just you. It's the voice that says, I owe it to myself to finish this when everything else tells you to quit. External praise can't give you that. It might hype you up, but it can't carry when your body wants to shut down. Only purpose can do that. You've got to choose which one you build your life on, praise or purpose. One will push you temporarily. The other will drive you forever. Praise dies in silence. Purpose thrives in it. You want to be unstoppable. You've got to live for something deeper than approval. You've got to train your mind to keep moving forward without a single ounce of encouragement. The minute you detach from you become a savage, untouchable, immune to the noise. Because the truth is, purpose doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be seen. It doesn't even need to be understood. It just needs to be lived. You carry it with you in every workout, every early morning, every quiet victory that nobody else will ever see. That's what separates the real from the fake. That's what separates the committed from the curious. When the lights go off and the world stops clapping, you keep showing up, not for them, for the purpose that lives inside you. Discipline must survive in silence. Discipline isn't loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't live in the spotlight. Discipline survives in silence, in the quiet early mornings, in the late night grinds, in the decisions no one sees but you. It's what you do when nobody's watching. That's the real battlefield. Because in that silence, when there's no crowd, no camera, no praise, you either show up or you fold. And that's where most people get exposed. Because without noise, without pressure, without someone pushing them, they stop. They get soft. They let the silence swallow their effort. But warriors, they thrive in silence. They're not driven by noise. They're driven by what they promised themselves when no one else believed in them. When the world said, you can't, they whispered back, watch me. And then they went to work, day in, day out in the shadows. That's what discipline really is. It's doing what must be done, not because it's seen, but because it's necessary, because it's who you are now, not who you're pretending to be. The problem with most people is that they only act when there's someone holding them accountable. Take that away and their discipline dies. That's fake discipline. That's performance. You want discipline that needs no audience. Build discipline that wakes you up before the sun, not because someone told you to, but because there's a fire inside of you that refuses to settle. That's what makes you unstoppable. That's what separates you from the weak. In silence, every excuse sounds louder. Every reason to stop feels more convincing. That's where the war is. It's not in the run. It's not in the struggle. It's in your mind. And when there's no one around to keep you honest, the easy route calls your name. The pillow feels softer. The snooze button makes sense. That's when the undisciplined break and the relentless rise. Because in that moment, in the quiet, you either quit or you double down. You want to be elite. Learn to love the silence. Learn to embrace the mornings when it's just you in the cold. Learn to grind when it hurts, when you're alone, when nobody will ever know what you did that day. Because that's when you're becoming dangerous. That's when you're building a mind that cannot be shaken. You're not just working out your body, you're hardening your spirit, forging something unbreakable in the darkness. The world worships noise. But the truth is, the real killers are silent. The ones who rise above. They don't announce every step. They just keep walking. They don't beg for recognition. They demand it through their consistency, through their silence, through their invisible battles. Because in the end, discipline isn't about being seen. It's about being solid. It's about being the same beast, whether you're under the lights or in the dark. One of the hardest truths to accept is that nobody owes you anything. Not their support, not their belief, not their encouragement. You could be climbing out of hell, rebuilding your life from nothing, and the world will still turn its back. It's not personal. It's reality. The sooner you let go of the idea that someone's going to come rescue you, push you, or cheer you on, the faster you'll become a savage. You've got to stop waiting for support and start becoming your own damn fuel. People get stuck because they expect others to care about their goals as much as they do. They think just because they've suffered, the world should offer sympathy. But the grind doesn't care about your backstory. Life doesn't give out rewards for effort. It gives out results to the ones who keep moving forward, no matter how empty the room gets. You've got to realize this mission you're on, it's yours. Nobody's coming. Nobody's watching. You've got to become your own motivation. Every time you look around hoping someone will notice your progress, you're wasting energy. Every second you complain about being unsupported, you're losing focus. Nobody will ever understand the pain you've been through. Nobody will ever fully feel the weight you carry. That's not their job. It's yours. And that weight, that pressure, that's the exact thing that will build your mental toughness if you learn to carry it alone. That's your fuel. That's your fire. You've got to be dangerous in isolation. You've got to be a threat when the room is empty. That's when real growth happens. Not when you're surrounded by cheerleaders But when you're surrounded by silence, when there's no clapping, no validation, just you and the decision to go again, that's what builds warriors. That's what forges not from others, but love for the battle. Not external support, but internal fire. So many people fall off their path the moment their support system disappears. That's weakness. That's dependency disguised as motivation. Real discipline is born when you stop needing the world to believe in you. You've got to dig deep and become a self-sustaining machine. Wake up when no one's calling you. Push harder when no one's praising you. Show up even when nobody cares if you do. That's the mindset that makes you untouchable. The moment you stop expecting support is the moment you start gaining control. That's when you realize this pain is mine. This fight is mine. And this victory will be mine too. You don't need crowds. You don't need applause. You need to look in the mirror and know that the person staring back is all the support you'll ever need. Because when you learn to fuel yourself, nobody can take your power away.